Welcome to day one of our class in Hebrews. Today we're going to be covering Hebrews chapter 1, verses 1 to 4. Really introduces some of the major themes that we're going to be covering in the book of Hebrews and starts off right away talking about who Jesus is and what he did. So hopefully you've been able to read the scripture. If you haven't yet, pause the video, take a second, read through Hebrews chapter 1, verses 1 to 4, and let's dive in. So right here in the beginning, we see three major themes that the writer of Hebrews is going to be giving us throughout the entire book. And those are three aspects of who Jesus is. He is the wisdom of God, he is the royal son, and he is the high priest. All three of these aspects of Jesus, these titles that we are given, the rest of the book of Hebrews really expounds on them, but we start off right away with a banger, and I love this opening line because it feels like a Star Wars movie, right? Long ago in a galaxy far, far away. So he says, long ago, at many times and in many ways, God spoke to our fathers by the prophets. And so the first thing that we get here is that God has been speaking to his people throughout generations for a really long time, in many various times, in many ways. God has always been speaking, and the primary way that he spoke was through the prophets. When you think about the prophets, these are people like Moses, like Joshua, like Elijah, like Samuel, and a lot of the major portions of the Old Testament are written by these prophets: Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Ezra, Micah, all of these prophets. So God spoke to his people because the prophet really was the one that was able to hear from God, spoke with God, and then delivered those words to the people. And so right away we start off that God has been speaking to his people in many different ways, through many different people at many different times throughout all of human history. But in these last days, or in the end, right now, he is speaking to us by his Son. And so we have the first entrance of the Son, this kind of character that we know today as Jesus, but yet the author doesn't yet reveal as Jesus. And so he calls him by his first title, the Son, and then he begins to label all these different things that Jesus is. And he is the heir of all things, or he has done. He has created the world. He is the radiance of the glory of God, the exact imprint of his nature, upholds the universe by the word of his power. He makes purification for sins. He sat down at the right hand of the majesty on high. Right, so these are all different things, and all these themes, when we put them together, that's where we get these three themes of the wisdom of God, the high priest, the great high priest, and the royal son. So right away, he's given the title of son, and just a few things that point to the royal son are the heir of all things. That he is the exact imprint of God's nature, and that he has inherited, right? He has inherited a name that is more excellent than theirs. It's the end of verse 4. And so we see all those things point to Jesus being the royal son, right? To be the heir of all things, that in Roman times, that was the Caesar. You have Augustus, who is the emperor, Caesar, who is the heir to everything of Augustus. So anybody who is the heir in any kingdom, any empire, that person was the royal son, and everybody knew who they were. He was to inherit everything, the authority given to God, and we'll get into that in a minute. The exact imprint of his nature. So that's, this understanding that he's not just, a small g God, but he is capital G God. Jesus is the exact imprint of the capital M majesty that he's labeled here, the right hand of the majesty on high. And so and through this time now, God has given Jesus this kind of title of the royal son. We see all of that wrapped up here. The second thing is we see the wisdom of God. If you read through the book of wisdom, or you read through Proverbs, something becomes very clear, is that wisdom was the thing that created the world. And so especially in Jewish understanding, wisdom with a capital M is the thing that set the foundations of the world. So when the author here is saying through whom also he created the world, he is referring to Jesus as wisdom. He is the thing that the world is held by. He upholds the universe by the word of his power. These things were attributed to the capital M wisdom. Again, you see that in Proverbs, you see that in the book of wisdom, and now the author is taking that and attributing it to Jesus. And then the third thing that we see here is making purification for sins. That was something that only the high priest could do on the Day of Atonement. And so what is going to be revealed later on is how Jesus is our great high priest. But we get kind of shadows of all of that in the very beginning. He just gives us this amazing Christology in the first few verses. And it is all to set up that who Jesus is great. And then he jumps into his argument at the end of verse 4 to kind of segue into his first big argument where he says, having become as much superior to the angels as the name he has inherited is more excellent to theirs. And so he sets up his next big argument, which is that Jesus is greater than the angels. And that's what we're going to be covering next. We're going to be looking at Hebrews chapter 1, verse 5, all the way to chapter 2, verse 4, where we get into this first exegetical understanding and argument of the author of who Jesus is compared to the angels. And so I'll see you tomorrow for that. And I'm excited to jump in more.